people are going to always try and take the easy way out, which means they'll skip a step if they can, and
But then-
perhaps the letter and this delay that they've experienced because we've had to like talk about it has taught them that lesson. I'd like to believe it would. But as far as allowing the subdivision, I think, you know, it's 10,000 square feet, and there's really, I don't think there's a single lot in Brentwood that's bigger than 10,000 square feet, so it's not like, it seems pretty simple.
Yeah, it's on a, no matter what, I think we will be able to know immediately if they're trying to get over a step, because it's not a very hidden location in town. Because I got to drive by it every day, and
Every day we pass by.
put it that way.
Yeah.
So the moment I see a stake going around and put it that way, I'll raise the alarm and make sure.
If I may, Mayor, council member, I suggest that you reroute and go that way, because we believe that that's what they're going to do.
No, I do. That's
I do
that's
too.
my pickup point. So I literally see this lot every day, and it's huge. It does look odd. It looks like it was intended to be two separate lots. I mean, if you see it both graphically and in person, I don't have any issue with the land use part of it.
But
I agree.
if-
We need to just keep an eye on it just in
Yeah,
case.
Keep an eye on them, but if DPI was, doing the right thing to contact us, so they're probably gonna do the same thing. They can go over there, but then you have to deal with Brentwood. So,
Works for me.
all right. Thank you. All right, so, motion
So,
on the floor.
I do have one question. When you subdivide the land, there has to be the ability to be able to do well and septic or run the water. So is that the case here, or I guess that's just not our problem?
That's the county.
That's the county WSSC
if they want to build.
issue.
Okay, so.
So they will have to go through that process.
Right.
Okay,
So this is step one of like 15.
gotcha.
They just want to see if they can get it reestablished as its own address. Then they would go through the process of building a house, because that's what they're trying to do. The house next door is one that they renovated and they're about to sell. So they're trying to do the same thing on this lot.
Money.
And it was a vacant
Yep.
building for
Same
close
one.
to at least 10 years. So it's
They-
kind of
yep.
thrilling to see it renovated in the first place. And I think the owners are out of state,
Yeah,
so I'm sure they're ready
He
to
owns
just
several other properties.
build it,
around
get rid of
town.
it.
right.
Done.
He does
Yeah.
stuff all the time.
All right, any other question? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Monroe,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Leggett,
Yes.
Mayor Tremina Lopez.
Yes. Next item, electronic signs at Bartlett Park. Need a motion before we discuss this.
Make a motion to approve funding not to exceed $40,000 for the purchase of electric signs in Bartlett Park.
Excellent.
I,
Thank you.
yeah, let me go ahead and break the silence.
Can I add Bartlett Park or the new town hall, just in case we put it in the front of the other building?
No, because doesn't matter, it's the sign. This
I'll
is
make
the
another
purchase.
motion if we decide to do that.
Okay.
Well, that's exactly what I was gonna say,
What's that?
is because I know we had discussed moving the sign, not having the sign facing 38th in both directions, but have it sort of facing out towards 38th. But I like the sign location where it is because you catch it coming in both directions, as opposed to having to turn your head and look if it's set back off of that corner. With that being said, we would then have to consider 3 signs if we also wanted to have a sign at the new building, which why would we spend so much money on the new building and not have the current sign? So do we need to go back and get a quote for a double-sided sign with the housing cabinet big enough to fit, and then the single-sided sign in front of the new building?
We have that.
We have the
So
three
do-
quotes.
Okay, you're right. Yes, we do. We got a double-sided
And
We
and
do.
we have a
and
single-sided.
single-sided.
Okay.
So
So, let's do some quick math.
Oh, you're trying to see if it stays under 40.
Does it stay under 40? If it stays under, I mean,
I don't think it stays under 40.
No,
Mhm.
it
It
doesn't.
doesn't.
It doesn't. So we could, so like with the, honestly, it doesn't, we could afford a double-sided sign in Bartlett Park. Or we could afford a single-sided sign in Bartlett Park and 3/4 of a single-sided sign in front of the town center. So we'd still have to find,
how much money do we
Do you have a
need to find?
picture of
That's my
that?
question. That's my question about the quick math, is how much money do we need to find?
6,
Because we freed up some money earlier.
yeah. We'd have to find an extra $13,000 to do 1 and 1.
So,
Natalie Dorsey. We freed up money earlier.
well, I was gonna say,
We're doing that this year.
we have
We're
construction.
doing it this year, so it's fiscal.
So the construction financing, I guess, is the question, do we have, wouldn't we want to use the construction?
So you want to
funds?
include the signage for the fire, for the town center?
Correct.
in
And
the
I'm just-
construction?
It's just a question, instead of trying to take it out of the fiscal budget, we already have the financing for the construction.
Yeah,
Let's
you
check
can,
to see if we
yes.
have money.
The
out.
signage for over there, you absolutely can.
And then that takes the issue off the hand for the extra, the 13 13,000 beyond the motion. That takes it off the table, and we just use the construction financing for the signage there, and just focus on the double-sided here in the park.
Yeah. And maybe you can negotiate that you're gonna get 2 signs, one of 2-sided, one single-sided, so maybe the price
Maybe the price would go down.
could
Good.
go
I'll take
down. Oh, please, thank you so much.
I'm good, thank you.
And I missed that part. You're saying negotiate with them to see,
Negotiating if they get in the 2 signs, the 1-sided and the 2-sided sign, maybe the
And then see if
closest,
they'll-
yeah.
Is everyone of the opinion that a 2-sided sign in the place where the current sign is preferred to a single-sided where the old-fashioned sign is currently?
I would rather to have
Yeah.
2-sided.
so
Everyone
coming and
would like
going, you can
two-sided.
see
Okay.
2-sided,
both
yes.
sides.
Okay.
Which one are we talking about? Just to make sure we're talking about the same double-sided one. Are we talking about the 16 millimeter?
Yeah, the more expensive of the two.
Okay.
I thought he said the 10 was better.
Oh, I'm sorry, the 10. I had it in reverse because of the title. The $37,813 one
That's for the double-sided.
for the double-sided is what we're saying is the preferred one because of the resolution. And then the single-sided potentially could come down in cost. We just don't know yet because we haven't negotiated that
Yeah.
with them.
Mr. Gaston, do you feel comfortable reaching out to them and finding out if there will be a price difference if we got the double-sided for Bartlett Park and then a single-sided for the new facility?
During this meeting, I sent him a meeting thanking him for his presentation and requested a site visit to include the mayor and vice mayor so that we can actually walk this through.
I appreciate you.
No worries.
I don't
One,
tell you enough.
and it's noted. What the gentleman did say that when you have certain signs on certain streets and 38th was to be doubled, it may or may not, because you're correct. Our current sign doesn't say much, but that sign will be a little bit more elaborate and it may cause some sort of public safety issue.
To have a double-sided?
Correct, because on 38th you stop at Volta. No, I'm sorry, Utah. You stop at that stop sign, but then the other one, if you're going southbound, once you leave either Webster or you don't have to stop again until you get to Utah. So his concern is as people are coming southbound on 38th because of the lack of stop signs on 38th, hint, hint, he can't judge where people are going to stop, and they may look at the sign. So he was concerned about that. That's one of the reasons I requested a meeting with him so we can do a site walk.
So do we also have maybe the chief as a part of that?
Yeah, we definitely need to shoot for that.
For the public safety aspect?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I would definitely. But that's what I've asked. I've asked for that meeting site. So at this juncture,
And when that meeting is gonna happen?
I've asked for it this evening. I'll get back to you on schedule.
So,
My suggestion is to approve it.
can we table this one?
Okay,
Do we
yeah, sure.
approve, I mean, we
My
can
suggestion
make a
is-
special,
My suggestion
Go
would be
to
to
the work
approve
session.
an amount that would allocate for both for all your requests, and then what you come up with, Ms. Dorsey will be happy because she'll be able to put that money back in her pocket. I mean, not in the pocket, but in the bank. It's a town's pocket.
Well, we'd have to bring the findings of the site visit back to council to discuss, right?
Yeah,
At least that way we can.
that's why it's a work
And then
session.
we'll vote on it then. Okay,
Yep.
super.
Okay, so draw your motion and then we
I will
table this.
withdraw my
item.
motion and table it for the next
Yeah,
work session.
thank you. All right. We now move to Arbor Day proclamation. And oh, I'm sorry, it's the Gateway.
Okay, that's
Gateway,
right.
yes.
CDC.
Sorry for that. And on the new business, we have Gateway CDC operational support, Councilman Monroe.
So I passed around copies. Thank you, Mr. Gaston, for printing these out. And let me know if anybody else needs. Go ahead, you want to read? Well,
You have one? You have one?
and if you pass this around to the chief,
So we're
to the
good.
chief as well.
Oh, you want me to give it to him?
Oh,
All right, got it.
and so there are two documents. One was the operational proposal that I sent previously, and then also there was a letter of support that we'll be sharing around the community. So again, for context, and I apologize, I was supposed to bring this at the last meeting, and I blinked out on it. Over the last several months, we've been working towards a few things. One being the long-term health and robustness about the Gateway CDC, because having a CDC is important in our communities. It can really, it's been one of the key reasons we've been able to get to where we are as far as economic development. That's our theme. But obviously the organization's had trouble over the time. And so the board, working with community members, has come up with a few efforts that we've been pursuing. One of them being the renewed engagement with the towns around operational support that does not compete with the town's economic development strategies, but supports it. That originally was an ARPA request for a larger amount, and then that amount was reduced to what you see in the operational support that's intended for a 3-year term. To quote what that is, the city of Mount Rainier will be asked for $60,000 each year. Brentwood will be asked for $25,000 each year, and then North Brent is being asked for $15,000 each year for the 3-year term as the initial proposal. Logic being that that was structured based on both population size and number of artists and or small businesses that are part of the creative economy. So to quote a few things in here, they're key for this. Gateway CDC was founded over 25 years ago in 1997. Building an arts district that is lively, walkable, and bikeable, where people of all ages and backgrounds are shopping in locally owned stores, eating at cafes and restaurants, and enjoying arts and entertainment venues. A model of successful artists built and backed creative economy. Gateway CDC has made much progress over the last couple of years with its open studio tours, Gateway Media Arts Lab, that's located in Mount Rainier, and the subsequent Lab magazine. Property management that covers the Gateway Arts Center, which is owned, that has studios in it, and then the master leases for formerly the Easy Storage businesses, and the locations in Mount Rainier, and then also the headquarters that is in North Brentwood. And then currently the studio model, which is an acronym for Stewardship, Trust for Common Design and Inventive Ownership, that we began pursuing funding from the state of Maryland. So that initial large ask for the ARPA money, we withdrew that because we found a pathway to pursue that specific effort, which was a pathway for ownership for artists, and also just kind of rethinking the way we're using our properties, going after a bond bill for that effort. So that would cover the 3 towns. That effort would cover the 3 towns for the Studio Labs effort. What it doesn't do is still address the operational support for the organization. And so just to clarify for those at home, what happens with nonprofits is you're often going after 2 grants. One is operational, which is paying staff, and then you're going after program, which is supporting the programs in the community, like stuff for kids, arts programming, stuff for seniors, the things we've done in the town. That's programming. Programming traditionally is a lot easier to get because it's a specific thing you're trying to do, versus annual operating funding support is tricky. The funding model that was put into place, not in a good or bad way, it's just the facts on it. And I do, and credit goes to Preeti Shapiro, who was a Brentwood council member that helped get the Gateway Arts District started and a lot of what we see at the Gateway Arts Center. Unfortunately, the funding model was intended to keep below market rate rents in place for artists and not necessarily a guaranteed funding source from the towns, the county, or the state. So year to year, the nonprofit over the 25 years has sort of been always scrambling for funds if there wasn't a huge project going on. Gateway Arts Center, the Artist Loft, which is at the Circle of Mount Rainier, the museum and African American Museum in North Brentwood, the headquarters, like all those things were like huge marquee projects at that time. And then since then we've had the Artist Center, 3807 and things like that. Hyattsville took off, like the Arts District started and they took off and they've been largely good and they had their own CDC. What was tricky for us is that instead of having one CDC for each town, one CDC was trying to cover each of the municipalities, which has its pros and cons operationally. And I'm trying to just give all that context to say why we're here at this point in time, which was to say, what can we do to sort of have a focused effort to re-engage with the towns around all the projects that the towns might want to do, whether it be revitalization or programming, et cetera, and then have the proper staff to support those efforts from the CDC level. And so that's where the number came from, which essentially equates to $100,000 per year, split across the 3 towns. So the 60, 25, and 15. My request for us would be to leverage the ARPA funds that we had some money earmarked for arts programming. That was sort of like a catch-all, at the time, and then we were sort of thinking about facade improvement grants. We kind of earmarked some things. And so for now, I wanted to get consensus that we could at least earmark that money potentially for this, knowing that the reality is still this, which is getting the 3 towns to agree to the operational support and this shared coming together moment. I'm trying to put it lightly here because I know it's a tricky topic. It's a lot of people that still have feelings about Gateway CDC that I didn't come here with, so I'm trying to be, kind about it because I know some people have rough feelings about Gateway CDC and some people love it. For me, it's a tool that we have to drive economic development in our towns and it can support it. So the only way we can do that is to not continue what we've been doing, which is like to have part-time staff and a part-time part-time executive director and a part-time staff trying to assist her. It's been a lot. And also a board, myself included, that is not paid and we're volunteer and we're trying to do our best to sort of drive these things forward. So that being said, I'll pause for questions. Oh, I'm sorry. So the bond was $300,000. We're pursuing that. What I wrote in and tried to advocate for was that we would acknowledge that we're trying to pursue this operational support. So that's why we're at this step. It's like, okay, state's gonna try and come in. Senator Augustine has also done legislation to support this development authority that he's trying to do for these area towns. So clearly there's a lot of good energy about supporting development in our areas. It's just about supporting the actual people on the ground that need to do the work. But I understand that the ask is to make sure the towns are on the same page. So I just wanted to update everyone where we are. Valerie's doing the same thing. She's giving the same pitch to Mount Rainier. Their next budget meeting is on Saturday, just for transparency, and she's got the same documents I have, and Evan's asking for the same support from North Brentwood. And so I'll pause there. I'm sorry. It's like a long-winded context. I'm passionate about this stuff, so I could talk all night. So let me stop.
And I have 2 questions. I think I forgot to mention in my report that I met with Senator Agustin back in March, the first week of March, and we were discussing about this new Bill 696, the Gateway Art Development Authority. How is that new committee, if you want to call it that way, would impact or affect Gateway Community Development Corporation?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I've gotten a lot of questions from folks in the community on this too. The state legislation, what it does is mimic what some of the legislations have been done in Baltimore does, which is basically to circle an area on the map and say we want to target dollars for it. Just I'm simplifying it, but that's what it does. And then you put people on the committee to sort of manage that process, put together a plan, and then they try to go after dollars for that area. The most recent example was a West Baltimore Ave Development Authority that was put into place in conjunction with Coppin College. And so the way it works is that group technically is separate from Gateway's Arts District structure. The Arts District was put into place through a different process and is governed differently. Like our sector plan and the way the map is drawn is governed by the county level. And what Malcolm's trying to do is direct state dollars to his constituents. So they technically are separate, but they can support the same game plan that we're trying to do, because the Gateway management team, which was a collection of different county stakeholders, mayors, council members, the CDCs, arts and humanities, a lot of folks, largely has not met regularly over the last 6 years. And it's a gap as far as a group that can come together and talk strategy. So it may not be a bad thing that as we're thinking about how to restart that we can maybe lean on Malcolm's legislation to help us have a team together to talk, because it is important to have a group together, but the name is confusing in that way because it is technically a separate thing from the way we're governed. The Arts and Entertainment District is a separate legislation that was put into place, and it's governed differently than the Development Authority that Malcolm's passing, if that makes sense. So state dollars, county, they meet in our areas, and it's going to be fun to figure out and work together over the next few years, put it that way.
And the reason I'm asking is because when they were forming, or they passed, because I think they have to present the bill, of course the mayors were part of that committee. So I need to understand basically both of them, how they are different from each other, because they both are with Gateway. And trying to understand exactly how that is going to impact this organization, or how it's going to help them. Because I know that seeking for support, but if you bring another organization, so how is that going to be able to work together? And
Sure. So half the answer I know and half I don't. My pitch is basically, if we can earmark dollars for the next fiscal year, that gives us the next few months. Because at that point, the legislation goes into effect, come April. It's going to go through at this point, we know that much. Part of that legislation is to develop a plan over a year, and I think it's due in next August of 2024 for Malcolm's, just to keep it clear, Malcolm's legislation for the redevelopment, development authority, it's called Gateway Development Authority. They have to first come up with a plan that's presented to the state level. Once that plan's approved, realistically, the money is we're talking like a year or two down the road, realistically. But what we don't know is, will there be operational funding support? To the mayor's point, we don't know if there's going to be operational funding support to the organizations on the ground to begin assisting with that effort. So that's why I say half the answer is I think there's going to be money, but I don't know, and I don't know how fast it's going to come. And so what we could do is just simply all agree. I'm hoping the town's going to agree to at least earmark the money. If we don't end up needing it, to provide that support, the money goes back to the pot. If we do need it, because we realize the state level funds aren't going to move fast enough, and there are things that we will all want to do in the next year or two around like urban renewal and things like that, programming, we want to get more artists. I mean, there's no shortage of asks to do projects. The performing artists want to do stuff with our towns. Lord knows I want to do an NEA grant and partner with the UMD. I know you were mentioning, the mayors want to do things. So there's never a shortage of asks. The issue has been bodies that can do the work. Like our town is no different than our town. We have big dreams, but if we don't have the people that can do them,
Funding.
or the funding. So, it's not, I don't have all the answers per se, but I know at least earmarking it and getting people to the table is one strategy to move us forward. Because since I moved here, the one thing I've heard is two things. One, let's get Gateway CDC, like get us, act together, quote unquote. And then two, how can we get the towns working together? And so I think we're slowly getting to that point, but I don't know how else to get us. Like, this is my putting my hands up. This, like, to me, this is 6 years of work, so that's why I'm passionate about it. And so, but I also understand if everybody's not ready, it may not be the right time.
But that leads me to the next question. What about if Brentwood said, okay, yes, we're going to support council member with this proposal 25, but then the city of Mount Rainier and North Brentwood decided not to support it?
Yeah, I've been clear with everybody. I think this only goes through if all three towns support it. That's it.
So like the support will be contingent on
All three towns supporting it.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard informally, and that's what I'm saying in the public meeting. All three towns have to support it, or it drops.
And this is primarily for staffing, right? I mean, that's where this money is going, is to create full-time positions out of part-time positions.
Yeah, and so because we can continue to talk about it at the work session, because I do want folks to be able to dig into this and figure out what it is. The question always comes up, like, what is it we want? And what we Gateway CDC's board has struggled is sort of getting that out of the towns to say, well, what does Gateway CDC need to do for the towns? So we tried to meet the towns halfway and come up with somewhat of a game plan. So the Studio Lab effort to focus towards artist ownership, trying to figure out what we can do to develop partnerships with University of Maryland. So we put that in here, of all the things we're trying to do, just to call it out. So the leverage is, there's a section on outcomes to expect from successful investment that speaks to Vice Mayor's point, so I'm gonna skim through it for a second. So this is on page 3 of it. There's a deliverables and reports section. And so we would make sure that's part of this agreement, and maybe part of this is an MOU as well that we all agree to. But the deliverables shall include but are not limited to additional staff and capacity, grant funding, and reporting from existing and new programs, more robust presence, and communications of existing programs in each municipality to measure success, robust record keeping, data-driven analysis on a consistent basis, new programs, branding, marketing, collaboration, and more, which essentially is what the towns have been asking for the Gateway CDC for years. On an annual report on Gateway CDC activities will be required to each council body by December following the fiscal year end to include annual audit report, measure of impact, testimonials, and more as needed to show impact. There's a portion on staff, basically hiring staff to carry out the day-to-day operations in the organization and to that support of the executive leadership. And then the leverage on that is what we sort of have coming to the table right now. One is the University of Maryland Campus Community Connection Potential. That's through Councilmember Valerie in Mount Rainier. She's working on that connection. I'm working on the connection with not working on, but have the connection with University of Maryland Creative Placemaking minor that was just created. Vice Mayor and I have talked with Kirsten and a few others at UMD. This stemmed from the Porch Fest, which actually kudos to Vice Mayor on assisting with that, because what grew out of that is an interest in working more with the towns. And part of that is leveraging the creative placemaking minor that was just created through the School of Architecture. The city of Mount Rainier was also just featured in WIDA, if you haven't seen it. And I love the show. If you lived here, they go around the DMV basically showing cool neighborhoods and neighborhoods are growing. Mount Rainier just featured. Former Mayor Miles was on that episode as well. But it talked a lot about what makes our communities attractive, and one of them is we're cool and funky. You know what I mean? Like with Arts District, it is what it is. And having the CDC to support those through grants like the NEA Our Town grant, as I mentioned before, a creative placemaking grant program that provides project-based funding for nonprofits nationwide from $25,000 up to $150,000. Like I said, the state of Maryland, I don't see any reason why the legislation won't go through, but the $300,000 towards the CDC's Studio Lab effort. And then support for economic development projects and partnerships on grants and community revitalization and more. That item C is like, hey towns, we're all here at the table, what can we do to support what you're doing? And again, I can't say it enough, this is my last hurrah, because this is 6 years. If Gateway CDC and everybody working together, kumbaya moment doesn't happen in 2023, I'll be spending more time with my babies and not being on the Gateway CDC board. But I made a lot of commitments to folks and artists in the community that I was going to try to get some of this through, and thank goodness for like people like Michelle and Margaret Boozer and Pat. I can't thank them enough because they've spent hours on the phone with me over the last few years. And Pierre, I mean, it's been a lot of people that we work with in the community that I would love to have come here and meet everyone. But I think this operational support, whether or not it goes through, still represents to me like the focus strategy on Gateway CDC supporting the towns. And so, end scene.
I think you represent them very well, and that was a wonderful presentation. And thank you for that. May I ask, is this, can this be amended in certain ways? Like,
Absolutely.
Are you guys, is the CDC open to recommendations from towns about perhaps specific deliverables and outcomes that they want to see?
Absolutely, which is the operative word is proposal.
Awesome.
Proposal. I want this to happen. Shelley?
I don't care what Shelley wants.
Just more of this.
Okay.
No, I joke. So there's more additional information to provide. I know Tony, who's the board president, is also putting together. Mount Rainier council member asked for like additional financial information. Mm-hmm. So that information has been collected or already collected. I can request that. So whatever we would need in the follow up, let me know. That was my sole goal out of putting it out, is just to make sure that whatever the either concerns or ideas, et cetera, are, I can take that back to the board and then just get that information. So the idea is to be collaborative in this effort.
Can we bring those concerns and suggestions to you at the next work session?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. I wasn't looking for a vote tonight. I was looking for just
And
get it out here officially.
That's great.
before I skip my mind, if they're trying to hire or someone, there is a grant and employee print judges. There is a hiring grant. So, yes.
I gotta bring that up. Yeah.
I'll tell you the name of the grant right now. It is. I think it's called the Rapid Grant.
The rapid grant.
Yes.
Okay. Is that a matching
Nope.
grant? Okay.
Nope.
That's the first question in the grant world.
And yes. Yep.
And UND is interested in also, I think in the partnership, we can also leverage students in this effort. So I think there's no shortage of, there's never a shortage of opportunity. It's just get everybody on the same page is the key.
And That's another one that, now that they're trying to hire more, they have the opportunity with the youth program, the summer youth program. So they
Yeah.
don't, the organization doesn't have to pay, actually, the county pays them. It's called the RAPI grant, yes. RAPI
Okay, thank you.
So are we looking to get this funding from this fiscal year, or this is a proposal for the next fiscal year? That's
So it's for the next fiscal year, so July, and like I said, from Brentwood specifically, I was going to ask for the ARPA funds be the leverage for the support money versus asking for it to come out of the budget. Mount Rainier, I believe, is her. She's going to be asking out of their budget, so it's a little bit of a different strategy. Like that would be a line item out of theirs, and Evan, Councilmember Dame, I need to check with on the approach that they were trying to take on the funding support and whether 15 works. Like I said, I mean, part of it is also it's fully contingent upon all three towns agreeing to support. I know if if we're not on the same page, there's no not to say there's no point in doing it. Like I would love if 2 towns out of 3 did it, but I think the key point of all of this is to get the 3 towns aligned. And so to me, it would be it's not a thing that can work if one town doesn't want to do it, because then it just defeats the whole purpose of the whole effort. Yeah.
I sent you the link.
Thank you.
Rapid Reemployment Grant.
All right, appreciate it.
We could always pull from the donation portion of the ARPA funding too, because there's a lot left over in that.
Okay.
All right, so do we table this item, or do you want?
So
to-
yeah, work session is the follow-up. Just if you can, just email me if you all want to have a meeting with, because I know you wanted to meet before. We weren't able to do it at one time. So if you all want to have that meeting with the Gateway CDC and some of the team to talk over things in between, all right, leading up to the work session, let me know. Whatever I can facilitate, just let me know, basically.
You are on the board of Gateway CDC. Valerie, her last name is Woodard. Yes.
Yes.
Is Councilmember Woodard and Councilmember
Woodall.
Lemay, are they also members of the board?
They are. So each
So each municipality
town
is
selects a
represented.
liaison. So I'm the liaison for Brentwood and also the vice president of the board. Valerie is the Mount Rainier liaison, and then North Brentwood, Evan is a liaison. And that's the way the structure was set up, and then there can be community members from each town, ideally at least one from each town that would be put forward to serve on the board as well, and then you can have at-large board members, which we do. So.
To be honest with you, I'm comfortable bringing my questions and concerns to you at the
Yeah.
work session. I don't feel a need to bring other people in at this
Yeah.
point, unless anyone else on council would like that. But
Yeah. So yeah, just in the interim, just any questions or bring them to either beforehand or at the council meeting, just let me know.
and thank you to everyone who did the work to get this together, because I know there was.
Yeah.
For me, this is like much better than the proposal that we heard before. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
This is, and I know you guys did this probably from feedback that you got from other municipalities. So
We did.
great.
So I appreciate the initial feedback, and then 2, a big shout out to Valerie, because I know she came in with a lot of great passion and helped us clean it up because of her role.
Oh, you're asking.
And I'm gonna misquote it, but she has a role in College Park that she deals a lot in grants, and so her knowledge has been really helpful. And also Michelle, who's one of the team members that works with us through this whole effort, she helped a lot as well, kind of pulling together the data. So
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Monroe, for that presentation. So I'm going to move quickly to these proclamations, Mr. Gaston, that you thought that you gave me 2 copies, but I 3-hole punched the whole package.
Now you know why I make 2 copies.
Yeah, but they are both.
I got you.
Oh, the official one.
The official one. Yes, we have 2 Earth Day is April 22nd, and then Arbor Day is April 28th. what I'm really trying to do is get in front of our proclamations so that we can do them in advance, so that we're not, if anything happens, they're ready to go.
What happened?
No problem. We are having an Arbor Day event on May 6th, by the way. We don't really have to read these tonight. We can wait. I just want to make sure that they were out and signed, and since they've been contaminated, I've got to now create new ones.
All right, so let's table this
Yeah, we can
item.
table that.
Yes, and I'm going to move to the letter of opposition to SB 0011.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, so I think this is an easy one, because just to clarify that this is SB 11, motor vehicles and school zones. There's a lot of opposition. Multiple folks have reached out, but specifically Timothy Myers from the PTO from Mount Rainier is asking for the municipalities to submit opposition, an additional letter of opposition to this bill. So what it does is it initially started as a bill that would reduce the radius that you could have the speeding cameras for a school zone below half a mile down to 0.1 mile. So if you don't know, anybody watching, the default is a half a mile radius for speeding cameras leading up, for a school zone. That's when you can put them in place. They were trying to limit it down to 0.1. And also require that if you wanted to do anything beyond that, you had to do a traffic engineering study, which is a cost. And then you would also have to pay for any relocating any equipment that was within that radius now. They amended it in response to Maryland Municipal League and others like the county council reaching out and changed it and moved it back up to half a mile. But they kept a small sentence in there that said, anything more than 500 feet, I believe, required a traffic engineering study. So it basically defeated the purpose of the whole amendment. So I move that we do a letter of opposition to SB 11, citing the fact that it reduces the safety for our children, and we support the standard half-mile radius that is in place, et cetera. That's my motion.
Do you know if we could get like a letter of opposition typed up for us?
Yes, we have a language that we can leverage that's already been written up. We basically can mimic what county council sent and just tweak a few things in it, so I can share that around and have the town administrator add it to a letterhead. And we can work with, we can have the LA.
Steer clear of the apartments at 38th and 4,000 up, okay? Nobody go up there, just stay away. We got a possible armed suspect. Well, we do have an armed suspect.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Excuse me, may I just ask, can you state the exact full name of the legislation?
Yes.
So I can find it on.
So that there's,
It is the motor vehicle establishment of school zones. That's the one.
yep, so SB 11, motor vehicles establishment of school zones.
Do you have language so we can put together?
Yeah, so we can, so Ella Perez's team is already like helping with language, so we can have them get us to draft. But basically, it mimics the language that's already out there from the county council on this, so we can get that. It would technically, so the hearing is tomorrow, so it'll be a late submission, but it will be added to the public record.
Okay.
And then Tim is testifying on Thursday. Tim Myers, the PTO president, is testifying. But so PGCMA, Prince George's County Municipal Association, Maryland Municipal League, the County Council, PTOs. I mean, at this point, I don't see it moving forward because of the number of opposition that it's going to receive. But stranger things have happened also. But it's a fair amount of pushback that I think it won't move forward any further.
Excellent. All right, so would you,
Should we call the roll?
please call the-
Councilmember Taylor?
Hold on.
Yes, I'm in favor of the letter of opposition.
I need to step away for 1 second.
Councilmember Monroe?
Yes.
Sorry.
My wife.
Yes,
Yes.
I'm texting her, right? Well, I was
already
texting you,
text
she just
the
texted
kids
me.
that
Vice Mayor
conflict.
Leggett?
Yes.
Mayor Tremaine Lopez?
Yes. So move, thank you. I guess at this point, we are going to have a motion to adjourn this long meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting of the mayor and council at 9:57 p.m.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
So move. So be careful up
Good
there.
night, Brentwood, be safe.
Good night.
So you say that we need to wait or we can leave?
You can leave, just go the other direction.
Don't go. It's